Hi everyone, welcome back to Evermore YouTube channel. It's Chris back with my rant stroke thought of the day, and it's all about money. Money talk. Show me the money. That's right. Darren Eales has showed us all the money because Newcastle United have released their financial numbers for 2023, and it's got a lot of us talking. So we're going to go through it, just kind of unpick a little bit, and I'll give you my opinion on things as well. It's a little bit split, actually, to be honest with you. I look at it in two different ways, two different sides of the fence. So on one side, from a business perspective, I think Darren Neal spoke really well. There's no doubt about it. In terms of a businessman and accomplished businessman. Darren Neal is very slick. He's very articulate. He's very intelligent, and he's obviously very proven in terms of getting the right results from a business perspective. You saw what he did over in the MLS, with Atlanta, and he talks really well when it comes to that kind of thing as well. So the main kind of crux about things, just to summarize it, I'm going to use someone who's been on the channel before, Kieran Maguire, just as a nice little summary there that Kieran's bashed up on Twitter, or X as it is called now. So basically, in a nutshell, the good, the bad, and maybe the what. I don't know. I wouldn't call it ugly, just call it unfortunate, possibly, in terms of Newcastle United's finances. So the main thing is the revenue is up 39%, and it's up 250 million is what the revenue comes in at for Newcastle United in 2023, and that's 2 years on the spin. That they've had revenue above 35%, so it's all good in terms of that for the football club. This football club used to make, I suppose, very modest revenues for the size of it in terms of commercially. Obviously, the gate was always big for Newcastle United because you always get 52,000 odd fans coming through every home game. But the former regime obviously didn't, maximise the commercial capacity of the football club. And that's really causing us a bit of a problem now. Get onto that a little bit more in a second. So the revenue is up 39%. Wages is up 10%. So that's 187 million. The average weekly wage, which is quite interesting, so it's 94,600, which actually isn't too bad if you think about it in terms of squads of football in the minute. We're a team which just playing the Champions League this season, finished fourth last season. You look at people like Manchester United with Marcus Rashford, 300 grand a week, probably Bruno Fernandes putting 300 grand a week or something. So for us to be at 94 grand a week is actually pretty good in excuse me, in 2023. And I think that's quite a good kind of way to manage the wages, because that's the biggest thing that puts football clubs in the in the red anyway. In terms of that, is the wages of the players. You sign players on ridiculous wages. We've seen what's happened with Leeds before. See what's happened to Leicester as well. In terms of the wages, and even Everton getting sucked into the FFP black hole as well, whether you believe it or not. We'll come to that a little bit more in a second as well. That can cause you a lot of trouble as well. So the the kind of player amortization is up 75% to 87 million. So that's basically just kind of spreading your assets of player sales over a period of time, kind of the length of a contract. So, within that, you'll have people like, I think we did pay the majority of Anthony Gordon up front, but there'll be some of that in there. There'll be some of the Botman deal in there, some of the Bruno deal in there. Burn, Trippier, all these kind of players that we had to sign to give this squad the surgery that it needed earlier on, for years of just nothingness from Mike Ashley. We had to spend big earlier on, so that's had to be accounted for as well in terms of other numbers. The EBIT losses are down 12% to 66 million, so that's pretty good as well. And this is an interesting one. So player signings was 153 million, which again, you're talking about surgery on a squad that was basically left to kind of rot away, really. There's still people within this squad, the bang average players, and that nothing says that more than the player sales is only 3 million. And that just goes to show you that we ended up with a squad massively full of players, so raggy dolls, if you will, that nobody wanted to touch with a 10-foot pole. And that's why we haven't been able to sell a lot of these players off. You look at that squad now, you've still got people like Isaac Hayden, Jeff Hendrick, Ryan Fraser. These are players that nobody really wants to buy, and we had John Joe Shelver, 90 grand a week, and John Joe's legs were gone, and Forest took him, realised he was shit pretty quickly, and shipped him off on loan to Turkey. They'll probably get shot as quick as they can, so we have a squad of players that aren't really marketable, and that's a big issue for bringing revenue in. And Eales kind of touched on that a little bit in terms of potentially having to sell a big name player to make headroom, as I think is what he called it, in terms of bringing money back into the squad. And that's quite worrying in a way. A lot of football clubs have to do that. They've been doing it for years. You look at even Spurs. When Spurs sold Harry Kane, Recently, they sold Gareth Bale, back a few years ago, and they had to reinvest that in the squad. Liverpool have had to do it, over the years, the likes of Coutinho and Suarez and people like that. So we're no different, and there could be a big name player potentially that we do have to sell. It might not necessarily be a key cog of the machine that we want Newcastle United to become. So it might not be a Bruno or a Botman or an Isak, possibly not. It could be 2 or 3 players in the mix of that. And I think Newcastle maybe missed an opportunity to cash in on some players. Like Miguel Rom's a great example. As much as he can pop up and get you a goal, he's kind of reached his limit. He's 29 going on 30. If we'd had enough of him in the summer, we could have sold him for 40 million quid or something like that. We sold Maxi for relative chump change to facilitate a move for Harvey Barnes, which hasn't quite worked out. So that shows you the way you can kind of move around these kind of things. And Neil said that as well. He said if you sell a £50 million player, you get £50 million cash back, and you split the fee of that player over a period of time so it doesn't hit you as bad financially. So I do think there may be some movement from Newcastle United in the summer in terms of selling maybe some of the bigger name players, some of the players that we would be sad to see go, rather than players that would expect to see go. But hopefully they won't sell a key asset that's going to damage the foundation of the football club. The squad cost is up 33% at 472 million, but adding some of the players to that. And then there's been funding of 127 million in some new shares at 50 million as well. So basically, in a nutshell, a lot of numbers, a lot of the percentages and everything else as well. But basically, our FFP is looking good. We're just behind the big 6, but have overtaken a lot of the other Premier League teams. So when you're looking at the big revenue teams in terms of annual revenue, and Neil's touched on this as well. Manchester United, no matter how they're a basket case on the field, 648 million revenue. Manchester City, 710 or 713 million. Spurs even up in the 400 millions. But it's interesting, likes of Arsenal, 372 million. So it shows you how much we're closing the gap. We've jumped ahead of likes of Villa, who on 178 million, the likes of Palace on 160, despite being in capital, Everton on 181. So we're well ahead in terms of the annual numbers on those guys. But really restricting us from signing players. And we've said this before, that FFP seems to be a pair of handcuffs that stops new owners, likes of Newcastle owners and Villa owners, from really growing their football clubs and being all that they can be. I saw Simon Jordan on TalkSport was talking about maybe new owners having a slightly enhanced FFP, where they're able to maybe lose a little bit more than the 109 million or whatever it may be over 3 years, just as they're growing those football clubs to start with, so they're able to invest heavily in the playing squad, etc., etc. But it just seems that the FFP ruling has been designed really not to stop football clubs going bust, but to stop the top 6 being challenged like they were in the past. When Manchester City come along and did what they did, and Chelsea did what they did previously to that. Newcastle United are in a stage, of their kind of development where they can't do what Manchester City did. Even though Manchester City went through different levels, they had the Mark Hughes side, Mancini, they moved up in caliber of players from the Gareth Barry, James Milner to Silvers and Torres and companies and those kind of players, to inevitably become what the City are today. But if the City take over what's to happen now, they wouldn't get to where they are as quick as they possibly have done, because Newcastle United are in that exact same position. We may have the richest owners on the planet, but we're not able to grow as fast as we want to grow. And hearing this from Darren Neils is a little bit of a reality check as well. And I think in terms of the January transfer window, there's been a few of the journalists have thrown a few things out there as well in terms of what it means for the football club. And even Kieran Maguire said it as well. He's the finance man, that, although Newcastle look good in terms of where they are against FFP, so there's no danger of Newcastle breaching, the FFP and the PSR kind of restrictions, whereas Everton are obviously fucked for what they did. Forest are dancing on the edge, and everybody else. These guys have still got to close their final accounts, but Newcastle aren't going to be in that position. And an interesting thing that Darren Neal said, these numbers don't contain the deal with Salah, which is multi-million. The deal with Adidas is coming, which is multi-million. They don't contain the deal for Lewis Hall as well. So there's a few different caveats within this that they don't actually contain. And I think there's been a few people who have obviously talked about it and made a comment on it. But I think one of the best summaries I actually saw on X actually was from Ginger Perlo, who does come out with some curlers after time, and he basically said that we don't have to sell our best players. This is just his opinion. I hope he's right, by the way, Ginger Perlo. He says the seller and Adidas money and the Champions League money, which isn't in these pots either. So it could be 300 million quid worth of revenue coming next year on top of, say, what we're just talking about now. And there's loads of contracts of players that are ending in the summer. We could sell the likes of Murphy or Miggy and cash in those millions rather than, the big name players. And I really hope that he's right, because that to me would be a better way forward as a football club. But I think it just reminds you of the levels of restrictions that are there, unfortunately, but it also reminds you of something else. And this is something that the lads said in our chat group, and I think it's really pertinent. And for me, I was all wrapped up in listening to what Darren Eales was saying and feeling a bit deflated. Oh no, I can't sign players this window. And just remind you what a shocking owner Mike Ashley was in terms of his total lack of commercial interest in kind of innovation at Newcastle United during his time as the owner. We had to sit and listen to people in the media, pundits, Rio Ferdinand, Craig Bellamy, telling us that this guy was a great businessman. We should have been thankful that he was our owner. And you listen to the shit that that he hasn't done, and the reason that Spurs are so far ahead of us commercially. Even West Ham, the reason they're so far ahead of us commercially, West Ham played a blinder in that stadium, whether you like that or not. Basically got a stadium for fuck all. They actually engage with the football club and commercially thought about ways to make sure that they weren't going to have an issue come financial fair play. They could go and buy likes of a Ward Prowse and and Kudos and the kind of players that they have bought. Mike Ashley couldn't give a rat's ass. It was almost like he won Newcastle in the card game and he couldn't be arsed with it. Loads of underinvestment, years of underinvestment, squad under development, stadium falling to pieces, training ground. It was an absolute fucking joke. Players having ice baths and wheelie bins. So the owners have had to throw money at the training ground, over 10 million quid as well. So there's loads of things that they've had to invest in the football club, which has hampered them in FFP as well. And again, nobody's talking about this. Nobody's talking about just how much of a shit owner Mike Ashley is. And it winds me up that because, it's like the guy got away with it. I know he was pally with the likes of Sky and stuff like that, but it really, really fucking winds me up. But anyway, he's the past, talking about the future. So what does it mean for Newcastle United in terms of the transfer? And say a few of the journalists have kind of ran their pieces on it and they've kind of summarised and everything else as well. I think Craig Hope summarised in quite a simple few bullet points as well. And he's obviously got a piece up on the Daily Mail, which Mark will hopefully put a link for below for you. But basically what he was saying was, again, big name players may be sold to fund deals, like a bit like what Jack Grealish was for Aston Villa. But if the owners invested correctly in the side, then that's great. But they have to be smarter in terms of the investment. This summer transfer window has not looked good. Outside of Tino Livramento, none of those players have really done anything in the summer transfer window. I think overall there was a loss of 73 million in the football club, and that was down to the player kind of transactions. A large chunk of that change was the Sandro Tonali deal, which was not a good deal. I don't care what the reasons were, but if the guy can't play for 10, 11, 12 months, it's not a good deal. Harvey Barnes' injury, albeit unfortunate on paper, doesn't look a good deal either now, really. He's come in and he's not played. So that's not a great deal either. The Lewis Hall thing's very interesting. That is an obligation to buy. And that it doesn't look like anyhow wants to play the lad. So we don't know what's going on with that one. So outside of Tino Livramento, none of them have really made an impact in the first team, and Newcastle can't afford to do that again. They cannot afford to get to the summer, and we'll come on to this transfer in a minute, but to get to this summer and sign players who aren't going to play in the first team is not good enough. It really isn't. If we're that close to the financial fair play limit, we need to be smarter and more tactical when it comes to transfers. So again, this goes back to the January transfer window. So, Craig Hope is saying here, don't expect January spending and no to Saudi loans. Now, I didn't hear no to Saudi loans exactly in that 8.5 minute interview that I saw with Darren Eales on the club website, but it would be a bit silly not to do business with the Saudi clubs. Newcastle pushed to really get this to be done. Loads of other clubs agreed to because there's loads of joint ownership going on, and there's some really key players that could come in and do a job in the squad, and PIF could fund, a large portion of their salary. And I've seen links to Mitrovic on social media today. It would be a really good filler gap until we get the summer and try and assess what we're going to do with the striker position. You've got the likes of Mahrez playing over there. You've got the likes of Milinkovic-Savic, likes of Laporte, likes of Neves. there's a good few footballers there that we could take back in terms of a loan deal for the rest of the season at the football club. And, it's a no-brainer really and help us get through this sticky period. But what do I think is going to happen this January transfer window? I can see Calvin Phillips coming through. I think that deal looks like it's who blinks first between City and Newcastle. We were playing City this weekend. And I think after that deal, maybe there've been more negotiations up in the boardroom, and possibly we'll see the Calvin Phillips deal accelerated from there. But in terms of signing players, Eels never said that we weren't going to sign a player. But if we are going to sign a player this window, it might have to be somebody at a bit of a bargain price. I don't think Dominic Solanke at 30 million quid will be that player. I'd be quite surprised if it is, unless they spread that over a longer period of time and in the amortization and kind of spread it out through the books that way. You've got likes of Gurassi at the Bundesliga, who's 15, 17 million quid, and he's on a real goal kind of run at the minute. So maybe that's a smart bit of business, but unproven in the Premier League. So it is going to be a tricky one. And after listening to Eels talk like this, it's a bit of a reality check to think that this window we might not be in a strong position to really buy players. And that's again, those loan deals make more sense to me. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. But another thing I think that Darren Eales expressed in his conversations and in his interviews, obviously Craig Hope and other people as well, that he wants Eddie Howe to stay for years to come. He wants kind of Howe to have a legacy at Newcastle United, like a tenure, which makes sense because Eddie Howe's done a great job since he's been here. He's still a young manager, and there's not a lot of that in the game these days. The other days of Ferguson and Wenger, their tenures are all kind of long gone. Managers chop and change every 6 months or something. So it'd be quite refreshing to see Eddie Howe have that at Newcastle United, but he has to be able to turn around the current slump. He has to be able to get us back to winning ways, and he has to be able to learn from his mistakes, come up with some of the plans where the tactics are figured out, and be a bit smarter with the signings as well. Some of the signings are questionable, so I think that is something that Eddie Howe's going to have to get right going forward. By and large, they've been okay, but there has been a few stinkers as of late. And I think we need to iron out some of those creases. And I think the talk about the stadium move has kind of been kiboshed a little bit. We're talking about Status and James's Park, extending it practicalities wise. I don't know how they're going to do that really. So a lot of information to take in really there in terms of these financial figures and what it means for the football club. I mean, like I say, two sides of it. One side from a business perspective, these people are very clever, very savvy, have a focused plan, have a focused strategy. They're bankrolled by some very, very rich people, and they're not going to make silly mistakes, to be fair to them. So you've got to give them credit for that. And I think they've done a fantastic job for the commercial element in the 18 months they've been here. They hired the right people. They've got the right kind of thinking, the right kind of mentality, the innovations to help this football club grow. The commercial appeal of this football club is huge. It was huge under Mike Ashley. He was just a lazy twat and he didn't push it hard enough. But these guys see the appeal and they see that, the Amazon documentary and things like that. The global brand of Newcastle United is growing and growing and growing. And, I think these guys will be here to push it to the next level as well, to spread it right around the world and encourage more and more commercial investment in the football club. So that is good. But in terms of the playing squad, I think we're going to have to be a little bit more patient. Some of us a little bit more understanding and reasonable. And I think we're just going to have to maybe, take a, what's the right word? Just take a view on it that we're not going to get everything we want to get maybe, tomorrow. It might be, a month or so, a year or so. We all keep saying this about how we're kind of 2 or 3 years ahead of the schedule, and everyone makes a joke about this, imaginary schedule. I'd love to see it, to see where were we, this year. We're going to win the Champions League. This year we're going to win the Premier League. But Amanda Staley turned around and said she wanted to win the Premier League and Champions League in the next 5 years or something like that or whatever. So we're kind of way ahead of plan in terms of what we did getting to the Champions League last season, which was an unbelievable achievement. I don't think we'll get top 4 this season. I think if we don't invest in the squad in January, if we don't get players back fit who can get back and hit the ground running and fire and stay fit for the rest of the season, I think we're going to struggle to make the top 4. Top 6 has got to be a realistic target. Get back in Europe from that way, maybe try and win the FA Cup if we can and get through the round against Fulham, which is a stinking tie as well. We'll maybe do a separate video on that as well. Awful time. No consideration for football fans once again, but we've got a good chance of winning the trophy there with the FA Cup if we get favourable ties. And then if we can get in the top 6, get back into European football, and that will help revenue boost as well and bring on a summer where we can maybe invest in key areas with a little bit more financial clout. But let us know what you guys think in the comments below about what Darren Eales has said. Does it make you disappointed? Are you happy? Are you content? Do you trust the process, as that famous line goes, like the NUFC bingo we called it? Has this made you feel a bit better about things, that you've had some answers, you've had some clear communication, some transparency, or does it make you feel a bit flat that we are kind of hampered by financial fair play, and it looks like we're going to have to grow slower than maybe you want to do? We always like to hear from you guys. Smash a comment in. We always do our best to reply to you. And if you can subscribe as well, we'd love you to join us. We're over 6,200 subs. We encourage comments from everybody, regardless if it's a different opinion of ours. That's okay. That's cool. If we disagree, great. If we agree, even better. But we're not going to argue with you and throw you out the comments and bar you from the channel if you have a different opinion of us. That's not the kind of channel that we are. It's a safe space. Come and join us. It's all free content. If you do want to give a bit back to the channel, there is an option down there below. So click whichever one suits you best. So yeah, we'll be back soon, probably with a Manchester City preview. A huge game at the weekend against the team that we're probably aspiring to be in terms of on the field and off the field, really. So it's always an interesting contest. Make sure you check out on the channel, guys. Have a cracking day wherever you are, and we'll see you later. Cheers. Bye.